Hey, what's up, everyone? It's been a couple weeks since I put a video out, and I just wanted to do a debrief on my commercial check ride. I had it on Friday. Today's April 13th. It's a Sunday, and I had my check ride on Friday. And unfortunately, as by the title, I had a disapproval. I know it's kind of a bummer, but it's really not the end of the world. And these things happen, and that's how you become a better pilot. And it was only one thing. I only have to go retest on one thing. Actually, I should take that back. There is two things. But spoiler alert, it was the short field landing, which I never would have thought would have been the problem. Like out of all the things, I was worried about power off 180s or 8s on pylons. No, those are all fine and perfect. It was a short field landing, which is crazy. But I think I know kind of like as I step back now and it's been a couple days and kind of like process in my brain of like how it got to that point, that I think I know why. And it's an easy fix. Like I said, I just have to go back and he was actually super nice about it. Like he thought overall everything was good, but he was a stickler on it and got a retest on that thing. So I'll back up and talk a little bit about the oral. And just to be clear, this is not instruction. I'm just giving a debrief of my experience. And so the oral was good. It was only about an hour, and I would say for this examiner, like he wanted to really go over the questions that I missed on my written, and I got a 92 on my written, so it wasn't horrible. But on the written exam, there's always the little codes that are down below, and in the ACS, it'll tell what the questions or the area that you missed. So we definitely went through a lot of that stuff. And I think a lot of those that I missed on there was really just the way the questions were worded. And so, because everything we went through, I pretty much knew. But he was kind of an old school systems guy. We talked about vacuum pumps and old six packs, and he really wanted to talk about aerodynamics and the effects of CG loading and things like that. So there was some things on the six pack stuff where like vacuum pumps, I was like, it's been a while since. So, but he took that as more of a teaching moment, and it was no big deal. I knew enough of the base understanding to kind of fudge my way through some of those parts, but the rest of all the commercial stuff and the foundational stuff of like what's required and, all that stuff I was good and solid on. So that started off great, and I had planned a flight. It's a VFR flight plan. If you're familiar with the commercial check ride, it's kind of like the original flight plan you do with a private pilot exam, which was kind of fun because I had VFR waypoints from here, from my home base to a airport up north. About every 20, 25 miles, I did a spot, and so we took off and had to set my timers and look outside and pick out points. And I mean, we only flew for a little bit before he's like, yep, you're good on that. And that's when he threw the first thing at me, which was an emergency where he simulated, said, hey, you've got, engine temps are rising, oil pressure's dropping, you've got oil coming out, your engine's still working, what are you going to do? So I did a diversion over to an airport 9 Golf 2, which is, I've had that on my, a lot of videos. It's the airport nearest to my home. So I thought, okay, cool. This is going to be a good thing because I'm familiar with it. And as we're approaching that, we're doing a simulated emergency. The wind that day was really out of the north. It was like 030, and it was fairly gusty. Well, it was kind of like, it was solid 10, 12, sometimes gusting 15. So call it like a 13, but pretty much a straight crosswind. I mean, it was off and on between 360 and 030, so kind of from this angle and this angle. So it was going to be a crosswind and I decided because this was an emergency, I was going to land on 27, which it'd be a touch of a tailwind, which shouldn't have been a problem. Like I've done that before. It was, the tailwind component may have been like 3 knots or something, 5 knots at the most. Like it was very, very low. So that was going to be my first landing. And he had said, this is where we're going to do the takeoff and landing portion of the test. So we were going to do a normal landing, short field landing, soft field landing, soft field takeoff, short field takeoff, those types of things. And I'm like, okay, great. So the first thing I probably should have done is after we diverted there, like I really wish I wouldn't said, "Hey, I want to go pick an airport into the wind," because when we came in on runway 27 with a little bit of a tailwind, I wasn't super comfortable. Like we got this little gust, and it was just a little floaty, and I kind of touched down for a second, and it was not stable, didn't feel right, so I executed a go around, which he applauded me. He's like, "Yep, it wasn't stable. Go and go around." I then stayed in left traffic for 27, was going to attempt it again. And I did, and it was successful. But I wished right then, I wish I would have switched over to runway 9, because obviously on that first one, I felt it. We had an issue, but I was confident, like, no, it wasn't, I can make this. And I did. The second one, I did make it. Still wasn't like top tier greaser, but it was fine. And when I did that, I rolled out and I got off the runway 9, and it's like, okay, for the rest of these, I am going to use runway 9. And he was like, yep, I'm the passenger. You do, you're pilot in command. You do you. But at that moment, like I was already kind of like mentally behind. And if you know what I mean, like you're on a check ride anyway, and you're kind of like a little amped up and you're just trying to do everything perfect. And because I executed that go around and it wasn't like, that's not normal for me. Like I can't count on one hand how many times I've actually had to do a go around because the landing wasn't good. I mean, we've done go arounds in practice and stuff like that, but it's coming. This was a situation where I was floating to the 1,000-foot markers, didn't feel good, executed the go around. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh shit, what did I do wrong? Like, what was that? Why did I do that? Like, what could I do better the next one? I was really replaying all that stuff in my mind, which wasn't keeping me on task, because at this point he's like, all right, let's do a soft fail takeoff. And I should have just forgot about it and like not kept wondering what the heck I was doing or what I did wrong in that one landing. So we do soft field takeoff, soft field landing. That went fine. Again, they weren't great because I was I switching runways and still dealing with some funkiness. And I don't love runway 9 at this airport. We generally, every time I come here, is 27. There's a lot of area here that's, outside the threshold here. It's pretty like just farm field. It's open. It's a very easy approach. Whereas on runway 9, just like a few hundred feet from the threshold, you can't tell in Google Maps, but these trees all right here and here, these are like 40 feet tall. Like they're not small trees. It's not just brush. So when you're coming over there, if the wind is coming out of here, which is where it was at about 13 knots, I'm coming around, you have a pretty steep approach. So the soft field in this one made it, but it wasn't great. And so the next one was the short field. And so at this point, I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, what did I screw up in these past two? They weren't like great. And I was just, in my brain, I just was fixating. So the next one I come through, and actually I looked after the fact, the new Cirrus IQ app, it rates your landings and it pulls the data. And so I looked on this short field, I had a 4.5 degree glide slope, or like that's pretty steep, but you kind of have to because of these trees. So I picked an aiming point. When you do the short field, you have to say where you're going to land, because you have to do it within 100 feet of the your point. I think that's what it is. Yeah, in the ACS touchdown, proper pitch attitude within 100 feet beyond a specified point, within 100 feet beyond or on the specified point. So I had said this line, the first line after the numbers. I probably should have chose something a little bit further down on this day because of those obstacles and because of my glide path had to be steeper. The Cirrus floats. Once you get into ground effect, if you're not right at VREF or just under it, you're gonna float. And that's exactly what happened. I came down. I was probably at 80. VREF is 78. And I came down, got here, rounded out, and I started floating. Was floating. I was now 200 feet beyond. And like in real world, I would have put it down, no problem, and I would have been able to get off on this taxiway. That's not the point. The point is the ACS standard is to, land within 100 feet of your specified point. So then I executed a go around, and I wish I didn't ask enough questions in my debrief with the DP, but I wish I would have asked him about this, because at that moment he gave me a disapproval. And it says in the ACS you can execute a go around. But why I think he gave me that disapproval is because I already did a go around when we came in here for the normal landing, and my other landing wasn't great. And I think it was kind of like, more or less like he just felt like it was a valid disapproval, and I have to kind of just go along with that. But I do wish I would have questioned that, because it was allowed. Now I understand, like, you can't just keep going around until you get it. Like, that's not the point. So it was a little questionable, but at the same time, it is what it is. If I'm looking back in it, like, I didn't execute it, and I'm okay with that. Like, there's a couple things I could have done different. I should have chose a different airport, because in the real world, I could choose an airport that's more into the wind, right? And didn't have all these obstacles. So there were opportunities for me to not just accept it and take it, or I could have chose a point that was a little bit further down. So there were some things I did wrong, and the disapproval came, and that's, I'm okay with it. I'm not that worked up about it. So at that point, he's, they're always like, well, you can continue. And I'm a big believer, like, hey, if I haven't had a disapproval on a Checkride, but might as well do the rest of it. And that's what we did. And the rest of it, I did really well. There was one other thing on the disapproval that he didn't mention while we were flying, but after the fact, he said he wanted to see it better, was a chandelle, and we'll go into that in a second here. But the rest of it was fine. And we did pretty much all the maneuvers. We did steep turns, 8s on pylons, chandelles, lazy 8s, which those are my favorite, emergency descents, pretty much all the things. And then the power off 180, the one that I was the most concerned with, or didn't think I was going to get, or was like, that's where most people fail out, but I nailed the power off 180, and it was a direct, like a 17 knot crosswind, and I absolutely greased it, and he was super impressed with that. So I wanted to be like, man, I just greased that one. Why don't we just forget about this short field? But yeah, the only other one was when we got on the ground. When we were doing our debrief, he says, I'm also going to put the chandelle on here because your airspeed was too high, and I was like, okay, let me think about, like, I thought I nailed the chandelle, but I was at like 95 knots. And if you look at the ACS, and this is kind of I want to talk about the ACS because this is the first Checkride where I really like dove into the ACS and really used it, compared to my other commercial, or my other Checkrides between private and instrument. I kind of used the ACS, but I didn't really. And I'll also plug VSL, Seth Lake, who's a DP. I think he's out of Arkansas. He's got a great series on the ACS review for the private pilot. He's also makes appearances on the Max Trescott podcast, but he's a DP, and he really explains how to really utilize the ACS. And he talks about, the skills portion of each one of these things. Like, if you are super clear on those and you execute those, like, you're probably going to pass. And so on the chandelle, the part that I kind of had a brain fart on, or didn't, like, when I was doing it, I wasn't really paying attention to it, was when I complete the rollout, it says right here, complete the rollout at the 180 degree point, just above stall airspeed. And I was not. I was at like 90 knots. And in my plane, the stall speed is like 67. And that day it was about 65, 67. So I needed to be more like 75. So when you're doing that turn and you're coming around, that one is you pitch 30 degrees, full power, and you're pitching up. And as you get to that 90 point, you're starting to roll out. I was asked after that 90 point, I started dropping the nose a little bit. I was still climbing, but also airspeed was climbing. And it got to, like he said, about 90, 95 knots. So he didn't mention anything in the plane, probably because I already had my disapproval. And so he just said, hey, I want to see that again and make sure that the speed's on point. And I understand, that's easy. So at the end of this, like, the good part is like, all right, I got to go and test a short field and a chandelle. Like, that should be pretty simple. And, I learned from it. I mean, that's at the end of the day, he said over and over, he's like, don't let this bother you. Like, overall, he's like, you did everything great. He says, but you got to be sharp. I got to hold you to a standard. And that's what I got to see those things again. And I'm fine. I'm fine with it. I'd like it to be behind me, but at the same time, I've learned a different way to kind of like, I don't want to say utilize, but I got a different respect for the ACS. And if I do end up becoming a flight instructor, which is a possibility, like these are all good tools that I'm going to use to be better in the future. And it was a good, I wanted to share with everybody else, like, hey, like, really truly understand all the skill section of that and make sure like that is like first and foremost, whether it's the oral, whether it's practical stuff, all the different stuff, like make sure you really understand what they're looking for. Because again, and I'm just regurgitating what Seth Lake says about like, if you can demonstrate the skills in each one of these sections, you're probably going to be just fine. And if you look in those two sections, I didn't demonstrate. I was long on my short field and I was fast on my chandelle. So, and the commercial exam is about being super precise and being a professional, and didn't get 100% on it. So it's fine. And now I just got to go up with my instructor and just go rip out a bunch of short fields, which is like, I can't believe it. And then, do a couple chandelles, which will be fine, and schedule back with him, and it'll be a thing of the past. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of debrief with you guys just for my own mental clarity, and so you guys could just get updated and learn, from the mistakes that I made. And yeah, I do have another video that's in my queue. It's been in there for a bit. I flew with a friend of mine. His name's Chris. He's also a pilot, and we did some really nice IFR stuff. But I made a big mistake with that. I shot a lot of it in time-lapse mode, stupidly, where sometimes when you turn the GoPro on and off, if you're familiar with that, if you hit the screen, it'll put it into time-lapse mode, which is not what I wanted to do. And so I'm trying to piece something together. And between that and kind of cramming for my practical exam, I kind of got lazy with some of this stuff. So I don't know. I'll probably put this out in the next day or so, at least some of it. And there were just some proficiencies, some approaches and holds and things like that. But yeah, that's about it. I'll see you guys in the sky at some point.